喂，
I just contacted Professor Huang, and I think he has noticed the internet problem, and I think he's trying to make it work. So maybe when you give him like 2 minutes or 1 minute to let it work.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Stuart. So, hi, Stuart. I saw your message. Why we can't see you?
let me check.
Yeah, can you help him to check whether
Yeah. Yes. I found him.
Yeah, maybe
That,
is that because he's listed as
Oh,
audience or
I think yes, thank you. I think I made him a co-host earlier, but then when he reconnected, wait, let me. Okay, there. Yes, I've made you a co-host again now.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
yeah, I think I saw Stuart, the professor,
Oh, okay.
from the audience, I think, but he just can't share and can't speak. Is that because of the link, or can we just move him to the, the guest list?
Oh, yes, I'm currently moving Professor towards the panelist.
Okay.
There.
Because
I
the
think
name
Professor
is
Stewart is
is
already
changing. Okay.
Yeah,
also.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we get Stuart. Hello, Stuart.
Hello, I can hear you.
Hi. Oh, finally. Hi.
This meeting is being recorded.
Can you open
Okay.
your video, please?
Yeah, no, my video's open. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Okay, here.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay, great.
Finally, yeah. Good. Okay. Oh, thank you, Stuart. Thank you for giving a presentation for our summer school. I'm very happy to see you.
I'm very happy to be here.
So I'm going to host the presentation. Firstly, I'm going to give a very short introduction about you, and then you are going to give the presentation for like 1 hour. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole meeting will be recorded. That will be okay for you, right?
I'll try not to say anything too controversial.
Yeah, hold. Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. I'm Baby Qin from BUCEA. I'm going to host this presentation for Professor Stuart Green from University of Reading, UK. Stuart is a professor in construction management in the School of Built Environment at University of Reading. And he has like over 30 years research experience in construction industry, city construction, project management, building performance. And his research work has been acknowledged internationally. And he's also guest professors in a lot of famous universities worldwide. So I'm very happy to have him to give us a presentation for this our summer school. I look forward to hear his new ideas. Okay, let's welcome Stuart.
Okay,
Here you go,
well,
Stuart.
thank you very much, baby. It's nice to see you. And good morning, everybody. I know that the theme of the summer school is urban resilience, and I shall try to touch upon that theme, but my starting point is not quite urban resilience. I shall pick that up as I go through. My starting point is to talk about sustainability and the process through which we visionize sustainability. And if that doesn't make much sense to you at the moment, hopefully it might make a little bit more sense to you by the time I've come to the end of my kind of presentation. Because what I'm kind of interested in, I'm interested in not in defining these terms in any kind of fixed way, but I'm interested in promoting debate, understanding, and above all else, kind of leadership in the space of sustainability, in the space of urban resilience, if that's the spin that we want to put on it. Okay, I'm going to try and share my screen. I'll try and get through my presentation in a little bit less than an hour, just to give you a chance to ask some questions. And I think if I share this, you can now probably see that screen. Okay, and if I put that into slideshow mode, which I can do like that. Okay, how's that? Is that working? Oh, good. You can see my slide. Okay, good. So here we go. Visioning sustainability in mega projects. We've only got one planet and we might as well look after it because we won't get another one. Okay, that's the starting point of these sorts of conversations, and it's a very sensible starting point. And this, of course, is my favorite sort of slide because it hasn't got any words on it. And we all know about greenhouse gas emissions, and we all know about zero carbon targets, and we all know about urban heat islands, and we all know about the need for resilience in the decisions that we make. And there's a kind of flux of terminology there and a flux of words. And as we follow these sorts of debates, and I've followed them now for some time, both here within the UK, but also kind of internationally, we can see how the emphasis always changes over time. And not only does it change over time, but it also differs across different contexts. And so different kind of cities put emphasis on different things that are appropriate for different parts of China in accordance with social, economic, and of course environmental conditions vary hugely across China. We're also, I think, all aware and a little bit kind of sensitized to kind of the dangers of greenwashing. This sort of idea that everybody talks the talk about resilience, talks the talk about sustainability, but that's kind of all they do. It's all a bit of a marketing spin. Okay, and the dangers of companies engaging in greenwashing for the sake of promoting their green credentials without actually committing in any real way to the material challenges of meeting the kinds of agendas that they describe. And so the kind of starting point of my whole kind of presentation is about the stories that we tell about sustainability, the stories that we tell about urban resilience. Stories are how we shape the world. Stories are the way that we bring kind of visions into reality. Stories are the way that we understand how we live our lives, and stories are central to the identities that we create for themselves. So I'll just leave that thought kind of hanging there, and I'll come back to this storytelling idea in due course. And I'll just touch on the kind of idea of sustainability and the way it's kind of subject to multiple interpretations. I mean, I've already talked about this in accordance with different kind of priorities in different contexts, in different kind of places. There's always this kind of challenge to kind of mediate global kind of ambitions in a way that suits local priorities. And this is true the world over. Of course, what makes sustainability kind of interesting, but it's also what kind of makes it difficult action, because you're never quite sure whether you're doing it or not. And kind of my kind of take on this is to look upon sustainability as the ultimate messy kind of problem. You know, very few sources give you real operational advice on how to put sustainable construction into practice. Managers, all of us were confronted with problems that are well, we're not confronted with problems that are independent of each other. Everything is kind of interconnected, and furthermore, not only are they interconnected, but they're interconnected in a dynamic sense. So we're faced with dynamic situations that comprise complex systems of changing problems that interact with each other. I call such problems messes. I'm citing a very famous source here, Akoff from 1979. So problems become abstractions that are extracted from messes by analysis. problems are to messes as atoms are to tables and chairs. It's a marvelous quote, I think, and it makes an awful lot of kind of sense in the context of sustainability, where what we tend to do, we tend to carve out quite random problems from this broad, complex space and try to solve those problems that we have quite arbitrarily carved out. Okay, leaving behind the big broader mess of the challenges to do with sustainability, or indeed the same argument applies to kind of resilience. So, you know, we see this all around us. You know, people create a particular set of targets about sustainability and then seek to address those targets. Meanwhile, sustainability is renegotiated, is continuously contested, kind of changes as different actors, different governance structures change as time goes on. And we end up addressing a set of targets that aren't representative at the end of a project of what we're trying to achieve. And I'll give some examples of that in due course. So, I mean, I've got a couple of slides here that to kind of take you through the idea of a wicked problem. This idea that wicked problems lack any definitive formulation. Sustainability, again, is a classic case in point. And I won't talk you through all those in kind of detail, but they're there for kind of reference. Every wicked problem is seen as a symptom of another problem. The interconnected quality of social, economic, political systems illustrates, for example, how a change in education will cause new behaviour in nutrition. We can apply that very much to the notion of resilience in the urban context. So every wicked problem is unique. Wicked problems are dynamic, and designers can't solve wicked problems. All they can strive to do is to steer a course that makes things better, and that's the aspiration that we set ourselves. And so that's a little picture just illustrating what I'm talking about. This idea that a wicked problem has no clear solution, unforeseen outcomes, it's socially complex, interdependent and multi-causal, involves changing behaviours over time, and the wicked problem sits at the centre of that idea. And so layered on top of that is the idea that sustainability is a super wicked problem, for the very kind of reason that time is running out. Meeting net zero kind of targets gets ever more kind of urgent, and yet we lack the global governance structures to make meaningful progress. There's also the issue with sustainability that those who caused the problem are also seeking to provide a solution, and the absence of central authority needed to address them is kind of weak or non-existent. The last point is very important, and kind of politicians, I think, the world over are always very fond of committing to zero carbon targets in the future. And of course, the date 2050 is very popular. They're fully committed to doing what needs to be done to achieve zero carbon by 2050. But they're much less committed to what needs to be done today. They kind of always delay the need to take action into the future, because today other things are not more important, but other things are more kind of urgent. And so there's always some sort of other immediate kind of crisis that takes their attention today, and therefore postpones meaningful action vis-a-vis the climate crisis until tomorrow. And so this idea of irrational discounting takes place, that pushes meaningful responses to the climate crisis ever into the future. And taken in combination with the idea of the lack of central authority on a global level is one of the reasons why sustainability, the response to climate change, resilience, all of these ideas are so kind of contested. So a little bit of a slide here just to kind of look at some of the different kind of narratives that kind of characterize this sort of space. You know, a typical definition of resilience, the capacity of a system, be it an individual, a forest, a city, or economy, to deal with change and to continue to develop, is a typical definition of resilience. The classic definition, of course, of sustainability is the one that comes from the Brundtland Commission report of the 1987, in terms of meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. That second definition, of course, is very idealistic. The first definition of resilience is much less kind of idealistic, in that it's kind of focused on the particular kind of challenge of ensuring resilience to kind of change. But the other kind of narrative, of course, that's been very kind of influential in recent years are the broader narrative of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which collectively form a framework for improving the lives of populations around the world and mitigating the man-made effects of kind of climate change. And you'll have seen this sort of kind of representation before. And so the 17 of these sustainable development goals, which would be equally relevant to any kind of conversation about urban resilience, because then a conurbation, an urban space that doesn't meet the baseline conditions for these sustainable development goals could not really be said to be resilient in any meaningful sense. But the difficulty, of course, is again the difficulty of prioritization, that different people would prioritize these development goals in different ways according to localized conditions. So the key point that I'm making is that the stories that we tell about sustainability, the narratives that we mobilize about urban resilience, dictate and shape what issues we give attention to and what issues we tend to ignore. And so the way we talk, the way we think, shapes the way we take action, which of course shapes the material conditions of the complex, messy problem that we're seeking to deal with. So the material realities of sustainability, the material realities of urban resilience are continuously shaped and reshaped by the narratives we mobilize. So understand that what I've done here is just turn this world kind of upside down. I mean, rather than seeking for fixed definitions, rather than seeking for fixed critical success factors against which we can measure progress, I'm starting to argue that the way we create narratives around these ideas is important. And I'll go on to talk about the importance of leadership narratives around urban resilience, because these shape, I'll make the point again, these shape what we give attention to, and they shape what we kind of ignore. And leadership narratives around sustainability are crucially important in terms of keeping multiple stakeholders involved in the journey. And this, of course, has always been the challenge with these sorts of conversations, right from the highest level of the United Nations right down through to the most modest of cities, wherever they might be. So the stories that we tell, the narratives that we mobilize about sustainability, about urban resilience are important. They have real material impact on the world. It's not just talk. Talk is actually very important, because talk dictates what we do. Talk dictates what we give attention to. And of course, this idea that all things are interconnected that I pulled a moment ago from the conversation about wicked problems and messes. And systems thinking for sustainability has become very popular in recent years. And in essence, it's this idea that all things are interconnected. The other key idea here is that systems are dynamic, they're continuously evolving over time, and so our narratives of urban resilience, our narratives of sustainability must also evolve over time. So let me just draw a few attentions here, a few examples from the Olympics that took place here in London 10 years ago now. God, that's gone very, very quickly. But this is useful to just understand the importance of narratives. I mean, history will decide, of course, on whether what took place actually lived up to the narratives. And I think that the public conversation is getting kind of more critical of what was achieved. But certainly at the time, the narratives around sustainability were hugely important. They were hugely important in the bid that went to the International Olympics Committee to secure the Olympic Games for London. Sustainability was an important part of our bid and underpins our preparations for the legacy of London 2012. So the narrative of sustainability was bang central to the vision of the London 2012 Olympics from the very outset. And here's a similar kind of quote from a government minister of the time. The Olympics and Paralympics must be a showcase for the British commitment to sustainability. This early declaration and commitment sets a benchmark for action. And the formal narrative of sustainability was represented within this document here, Towards a One Planet 2012. The organising committee claimed to be the first host city to embed sustainability in its planning from the start. The promise to incorporate sustainability on a broad scale into almost every planning and logistical aspect of the event. The London 2012 Sustainability Plan was formed some 5 years before the Games took place and focused on 5 key themes. Resilience vis-a-vis climate change, waste, biodiversity, inclusion and healthy living were the 5 themes that they chose to emphasize. And of course, there was an assurance process in place to make sure that the decisions that they took were measured against these kind of aspirations. We also have to understand, of course, that with mega projects like the Olympics, they have to be ready on time. It's no good delaying the opening of the stadium by 3 weeks for the sake of improving sustainability. Nobody would thank them for that. That just isn't possible. And of course, they're also required to deliver the infrastructure within specified cost targets. Although on mega projects of this sort of nature, these are invariably kind of renegotiated over time. The really important imperative is that the infrastructure is ready on a particular date to host the Olympics. And so these kind of mega projects like the Olympics and the Olympics in Beijing were no different. They're characterized by a huge number of stakeholders. And so different interest groups who have a stake in the Olympics being successful, but also have a stake in the sustainability agenda. And so I've kind of listed some of them that were stakeholders in the London Olympics 2012, all with subtly different takes on the relative importance of different sustainable development goals, all linked to their own particular priorities. And so, of course, you've got the organising committee, you've got the Olympic Delivery Agency, who were responsible for delivering the infrastructure. You've got a government minister who's responsible for the Olympics. You've got the Mayor of London. You've got the British Olympic Association. You've got the British Paralympic Association. You've got the Olympic Board. You've got the 6 kind of local host boroughs, the kind of the urban areas within which the games are located. And so I've listed 6 of them there. And then you've got this special vehicle that was created to ensure the long-term legacy of the Olympic Games. My point is that all of these agencies have different priorities relating to their different remits, and they're all subject to external pressures, and they're all subject to external change. And so this issue of resilience becomes absolutely kind of important, irrespective of what happens outside and beyond the immediate system. You have to deliver the games to open on a particular date. But nobody has a common understanding of, say, sustainability. Nobody has a common understanding of resilience. What is required is a leadership job whereby a common narrative around these ideas can be formulated. Okay, so from 2007 right through to 2012, of course, when they started to work on the Olympics, 5-year delivery period from when the Olympic, right, lots of things changed. The Prime Minister changes, there's terrorist attacks in London, which changes the priorities for the organising committee, puts a big emphasis on security. The Mayor of London changes, the mayors of the host borough changes, political priorities change, sustainability debate progresses. So they're operating in a constantly changing context. And of course, the global financial crash occurs in 2009, 2010 to put particular strain on the delivery of major projects such as this, and also particular pressures on visions of sustainability. And so the games were completed in a very different economic and political context from which they were started. And mega projects such as this are characterized by a number of key issues. They're characterized by long time horizons. They're characterized by the fact that the leadership team keeps changing. You know, the people in charge of implementing the vision at the end of the project are not the same people who set the vision in the first place. It keeps changing. Political context shifts over time. You have multiple stakeholders with conflicting interests, and there's always the danger of a lock-in to a particular project concept from the very outset that they then find very difficult to unpick in order to be responsive to these changing circumstances. Delivery is a high-risk activity and significantly exposed to unforeseen events, so-called black swan events. Things happen, stuff happens, and there's a host of misinformation about cost, schedule, benefits and risk. And misinformation is not the exception, misinformation tends to be the norm. And so these are known characteristics of any kind of urban mega project. I just put an example here from the this kind of urban mega project of the Greater Bay Area in China, and point here at all the different kind of constituencies and authorities that have a stake in this broader urban kind of conurbation of building this economic entity of the Greater Bay Area. And so all the things that I've talked about are very much evident. Let's have a drink of water, excuse me, are very much evident in this sort of context, irrespective whether it's in London, whether it's in China, whether it's in South America, wherever it might be. contested notions of sustainability. Contested notions of resilience are not the exception, they are the norm. And the challenge is, how do we deal with that? How do we make meaningful progress given that we operate in this context? So let me just start to say a little bit about narratives and about the idea of narrative as a research perspective. So I'm drawing my thinking here about sustainability. I'm drawing my thinking about urban resilience from the so-called narrative turn in organisation studies. And so the idea that the very notion of organisation, the very notion of sustainability is a narrative construct, and a narrative construct that's continuously renegotiated. And I make the distinction here between the formalized, performative narratives of sustainability and the individual stories that managers tell about sustainability. The stories play an important role in connecting with the formalized narratives and the lived experience of the people whose behavior they are trying to influence. And so many kind of managers in this space take on board the role of sustainability champion. They need to take on this role of sustainability champion. And part of that role is connecting the people who they are seeking to lead with the formalized narrative of sustainability in a way that makes it continuously kind of relevant. And so the focus of this way of thinking lies on those sorts of processes. It doesn't focus on some sort of esoteric kind of definition of urban resilience, but it focuses on the processes through which we make meaningful progress against the urban resilience kind of agenda. And I'm saying that it's this idea of narrative that brings a degree of coherence across different stakeholders, providing an ongoing dynamic basis for this process, this unfolding process of prioritization. I hope that makes some sort of sense, but instill that with the idea of leadership. Leadership as narrative is about creating a narrative for the future that connects to the past. It's about creating a narrative for the project that is of central importance. And so they were doing narrative work when they talked about the vision of sustainability of the London Olympics 2012. They were trying to create this narrative to make sense of this abstract idea of sustainability, to make it meaningful to the people involved. And these leaders are responsible for constructing and continuously reconstructing meaning through the use of narrative. The challenge forever is to locate important themes and to communicate them consistently and creatively live them on a daily basis. And so the focus of research becomes how that is actually done and the extent to which the adopted narrative approaches are successful in shaping behaviors. That's the research focus. And so, you know, here's a nice little quote about kind of leadership, which I pulled from some empirical work that we did with the chief executive officers from the UK kind of engineering sector. For me, leadership is about providing direction and inspiring people. Real leaders have to be enthusiastic, open-minded, less constrained people who actually realize what is possible. And so what we need for urban sustainability, what we need for resilience, we need leaders who are capable of promoting a convincing, persuasive narrative to provide direction and inspiration to the people whose roles are so important. And so the narrative approach further kind of shifts the emphasis from predetermined critical success factors towards the processes of continuous contestation. So such processes are not accessible through questionnaire surveys or direct observation, nor do they lend themselves to mathematical modelling. Narrative methods focus attention onto the sense-making mechanisms of senior managers and how they position themselves as agents of change. Bebe knows all about sense-making mechanisms. The focus lies on the way the meaning of sustainability, the way the meaning of urban resilience is continuously negotiated. Temporality and dynamism are the default conditions. Trade-offs and performance metrics are continuously socially negotiated through the medium of narrative. So there we go. Urban resilience, sustainability on mega projects. The research agenda is a research agenda towards narrative approaches, but also the practice agenda is to make people more aware of the role of narrative and the importance of narrative in providing leadership in this sort of space. And so my closing thoughts are that we need new models of research which embrace the lived realities of urban sustainability. We are all involved in a continuous collective search for meaning, and we will always will be, because the concepts evolve, events evolve, the world changes forever as we are trying to close in on a definition. Visions of sustainability inevitably evolve on urban mega projects. Resilience is a narrative turn. The focus on resilience is a shift in the narrative. There is a need, therefore, to shift the research focus to visioning as a process. How successful are we in visionizing urban resilience across multiple stakeholders? Leaders have a responsibility for setting an agenda against which expectations can be measured. And if leaders are not doing this, then what is it that they are doing? But they also have a responsibility to ensure that such agendas are meaningful across multiple contexts. Narratives are important in the creation of collective identity, while emphasizing that sustainability is forever temporal, it's temporary in its construct, and multiple voices are forever giving different interpretations. That's the end of my formal presentation. I'm quite happy to take a few questions if we've got any.
Cool, nice. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting, and I think it's a very good angle to, to understand the sustainability and the urban resilience. And also, in recent years in China, this topic is, it's growing, and also the leaders are giving new interpretations for what does urban resilience means, and that definitely affect how this will be interpreted and practiced in local cities, and also by local people and practitioners. So that's very interesting presentation. Thank you so much, Stuart. And I think, yeah. And I think I'm going to check the the chat test to see whether any questions. So all of our students can give questions. You can tap in the chat stuff.
There's a lot of oh goodness, there's a lot of comments.
Yeah, I think yeah, we got quite a lot of audience there. There's now over 180 students who has watched
Indeed.
your presentations. Yeah.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, guys.
I'm sure
I
they
hope
enjoyed it.
I hope there's something there for you. Take a few little thoughts, a few little ideas. You'll lodge them in your head.
Yeah.
Good,
The
okay,
students.
Thank
Yeah.
you very much, Shania. An amazing lecture. You're very kind. You're very kind. It's still quite early in the morning for me, so I'm not sure it was that amazing. It takes me a while to get warmed up, and my voice is struggling a little bit.
Yeah, it's 9 a.m.
Yeah.
in UK time. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh yeah, we got Professor Dean, who is a researcher. Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, Professor Stewart. Very interesting lecture. And I think we can give students a few minutes to compose their questions. So I would like to ask one. And in your presentation, you say this kind of evolution of narratives, maybe starting from sustainability to resilience, this in general, you think it's more like a changing of narratives. But from what I understand, the essence of the narrative is it won't change. Maybe in a philosophical way or ideological way. It's all concerns to sustain the culture, sustain the society, sustain the whole human race. I'm not sure if I understand you correctly, but I would like you to give us something more practical, like what happened during the preparation of the 2012 Olympics in London, within those measurement practices of mega projects, which could be instructive for any practices, further future practices in resilient city building.
Okay, thank you. I think there's 2 points there. The first point you make is about the mega narrative not changing.
Yeah.
And of course, my opening slide was the image of the planet and the fact that we've got only one planet, and that we can't afford to damage that planet. And so this is not a trivial kind of game. And so I've emphasized that very clearly. But the debate is, how do we get to the end goal that we seek? Okay, and it's the how that characterizes how the debate shifts. And in fact, even the end goal is subject to subtle shifts in focus, because we shift from greenhouse gases, we shift into zero carbon, we shift into keeping temperatures within 1.5 kind of degrees C, and even the shift from sustainability to resilience is a kind of shift in the how. It's what people think we should focus on, what things are more important. And I make the point that these things are continuously contested. The conversations that kind of take place now are different from the conversations that took place 10 years ago. I take your point that the reality is we still only have one planet. I mean, yes, we do, but the complexity of it, the wicked nature of the problem we're trying to address the kind of the fact that climate change is a super wicked problem against the criteria that I quoted are all very real kind of issues. And if we ignore those, we ignore them at our peril. Okay, so the whole emphasis is how to make meaningful progress better and how to apply leadership to make that progress better. That's my whole emphasis. And I could have talked in great detail about the micro practices that they utilized on the London 2012. I could have done that, okay? But I think it's more useful to set out the principles against which we might seek to understand those practices, okay? And the key kind of principle that I hope I get across is the fact that at the very earliest stages of that mega project, they did create this kind of formalized narrative of sustainability. And they attempted to exercise leadership to put that into practice. And the medium through which that leadership was practiced was the medium of narrative. Okay, that is the kind of worldview that I bring to the space. Okay, so you can talk about all sorts of measurement systems and performance kind of indicators, but we see those as kind of artifacts of these broader narratives. The research focus is to understand how to be more effective in providing leadership narratives around urban kind of resilience without actually losing connectivity with, one, the broad end goal, but two, the real world constraints within which we operate. The fact that there are competing priorities, the fact that we do tend to delay the really important things we have to deal with the really urgent things that we need to deal with. Right today, I do that. I'm guilty of that. You're guilty of it too, and so's Bebe. Okay, that's the human condition. Okay, we have to work with the human condition. We cannot ignore it. Whatever sustainability is done, whatever urban resilience is done, it's done by us. Okay, with all of our limitations.
Thank you. I think that you are quite right. Since the problem itself is a really complex problem and it's evolving all the time. It's a whole dynamic. And maybe today we're thinking about resilience because so many disasters happened during the last 10 or 20 years, and it's exacerbating, and it's accelerating. And so we start to move our narrative from sustainability to resilience.
We've just had here in London the hottest day on.
Yeah, I heard. Very sorry about that.
40 degrees. Okay, it's like being in Chongqing.
But in Chongqing, we have air conditioning everywhere, basically. Not in UK.
That's part of the problem.
So we can presume the air conditioning sales in UK will be really rising, right?
Rally industry, right?
But sure, I think today and more we are considering the problem is universal, and we are facing the same problem. I think I took you time enough, and I saw there's a question in the chat room.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question, by the way. It's a good question.
Thank you,
Professor Dean. And there is a very great question which just added to your answer. I think this Cassia asked it. So there are a lot of multiple stakeholders with conflicting interests. So do you have a definition model or method to decide which interests to satisfy and which not? This is a great question.
The answer is no. And of course, there is no such definitive model or method to decide. You know, these things are socially contested. People have different interpretations. They bring different meanings. And of course, they have different interests. You know, this is characteristic of the human condition. Mega projects take place within those sorts of conditions. You know, this is the kind of fact, and there is no definitive model to solve this. You know, because it's a wicked problem, and you can't solve wicked problems. And any model that you devise merely extracts a number of kind of criteria from the mess, and then fiddles around with this arbitrary abstraction. Okay, so I don't agree with the premise that there are definitive model, and I think our constant desire to put our hands on a definitive model, dare I say it, is part of the problem.
Yeah. And I just want thank you for your answers, George. That's very a good answer. And
thank you for the question.
Yeah, it's and I also want to add it, and it doesn't bring up, this question just bring up a very good research angle that you can look at how, in any specific case of urban resilience, to see how different interests to be, contested, to see which one, which not. It's very good research point, actually. Thank you, Kais. Yeah, and thank you, Stuart. It's a very good presentation. I'm very glad to see you here, Stuart. Yeah, and I'm sure you know that we all enjoyed your presentation. Thank you so much.
Well, I wish you all good luck. It's been my pleasure. Okay, together we can change the world.
Thank you, and enjoy your hot summer holiday.
I will do, yeah. So I'll log out now, baby.
Yeah.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thank you very much for Professor Qin Beibei's introduction and holder. And thank you for Professor Ding Rui's questions. I think this afternoon's lecture will end this time. Everyone and every participant, let's meet at 8 o'clock Beijing time. See you later.